Chapter 33. Miles Hendon in the Palace. For hours and hours Miles Hendon walked along the streets of London looking for Edward. He had very little money when he came to the city. Now he had no money at all, for the thieves had stolen it. He was tired and very hungry. The night passed, and he was still looking for his little friend. Where could he go? He thought. He could find no answer. When day arrived at last, he had made many miles, and was tired, hungry, and sleepy. He wanted some breakfast, but how could he get it if he had no money at all? He did not want to beg. He was too proud for it. Then he found himself near Westminster and the Abbey. He decided to try and find his father's old friend, Sir Humphrey Marlowe. Hendon came up to the palace. To get into the palace in his clothing was simply out of the question for him. He looked simply terrible in his dirty and ragged clothes. Suddenly, the whipping boy passed him. When he saw Miles, he said to himself, "I am sure this is the tramp that His Majesty is so worried about." Hendon came up to him and said, "You have just come out of the palace, haven't you? Do you know Sir Humphrey Marlowe?" The boy was surprised. He thought, "What? My dead father?" Then he answered, "Yes, I do." "If so, will you ask him to come out for a minute to talk to me?" "With pleasure," said the whipping boy. "Tell him I am Miles Hendon, son of Sir Richard, a friend of his." "Wait a little, good sir," said the boy, and disappeared. Soon an officer with several soldiers passed by. The officer saw a stranger, stopped his men, and ordered them to arrest Miles. Hendon's old and ragged clothes seemed strange to the officer. Miles was going to explain, but the officer did not pay any attention to his words. Hendon was disarmed and searched. Nothing was found but a document. It was a letter which Edward, his lost little friend, had written on that black day at Hendon Hall. "Hold him! Don't let him go away," the officer said to his men. "I shall carry this royal document into the palace and send it to the king." "This is the end," said Miles to himself. "Of course they will hang me now. What will become of my poor lad? Nobody knows." By and by the officer came again in a great hurry. He bowed to Miles and said, "If you please, sir, follow me." Hendon was brought to a large hall full of richly dressed lords and ladies. He was left standing in the middle of the hall. The young king was sitting on the throne speaking with a lord. In a moment the king raised his head a little, and Hendon saw his face. "What is this?" thought Hendon. "The king of the kingdom of dreams on his throne?" He looked at the king and thought, "Is it true, or is it a dream?" Then, suddenly, a happy idea came to him. He walked to the wall, took up a chair, brought it back, put it on the floor noisily, and sat down in it. At once, several hands were laid on his shoulders, and a voice cried out, "Stand up, you fool! How can you sit in the presence of the king?" The king heard the noise, and it made him raise his head. He held out his hand and cried out, "Do not touch him! It is his right to sit in the presence of his king." Then he continued, "Ladies, lords, and gentlemen, I want you to know that this is my true servant, Miles Hendon. He has saved his prince from possible death with his good sword. He took his king's punishment upon himself and saved him from shame this way. For all this, he is a lord now, and will receive much gold and land from me. More than that, he, his children, and grandchildren will have the right to sit in the presence of the King of England. Two persons who had come from the country only that morning and had been in the hall only for 5 minutes stood listening to these words. They looked at the king, then at Miles Hendon, then at the king again. They were Sir Hugh and Lady Edith. But the new lord did not see them. He was still looking at the king, saying to himself, "Oh God, so this is my mad pauper. This is he to whom I wanted to show my house of 70 rooms and 27 servants. This is he who had worn only rags. This is he who had eaten only offal and nothing else. This is he whom I wanted to have as a small brother and help and defend. I am sorry I have no bag to hide my head in from shame." He dropped upon his knees and thanked the king. When the king saw Sir Hugh, he said, "This man has stolen the riches and the title of Miles Hendon, his brother and my good servant. Throw him into prison." Sir Hugh was led away. Then Tom Canty appeared. He was richly dressed. His clothes were different from other people's clothes. He came up to the throne, fell upon his knees before the king, who said, "I know the story of these past weeks, and I am well pleased with you. You had kindness and mercy. I give you the title of the king's ward for it. Have you found your mother and your sisters? Good. I shall take care of them. They will not suffer from hunger any more. They will have all they will need. And you will wear a costume that nobody else must wear. So everybody will know you by your costume and greet you as the king's ward." Tom Canty, proud and happy, rose from his knees and kissed the king's hand. Then he hurried to his mother to tell her and Nan and Bet the good news.